Welcome to the Red Chip Poker Podcast, where we share stories and strategies from the game's most fascinating minds. No matter where you are in your poker journey, there's always something new to learn. So let's get right into today's conversation with your host, Robbie Straczynski.
Hey everybody, we are back once again for a brand new episode of the Red Chip Poker Podcast. This week we look to the Great White North, Canada, to find our next guest and discover none other than Mike Gano. Mike's a professional poker player living in Victoria, which is near Vancouver, British Columbia. He's a prolific Twitch streamer, author, coach, and owns the strategy website pokerabox.com. Today, we're going to get to know him a little bit better and hear about his career and as a player and as a coach. Mike, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Robbie. Good to be here.
Likewise. Good to speak with you. I've been obviously doing a bunch of research to find some questions for you. You seem like an interesting guy, and it's always good to put a voice to the name and to all of the facts I see on screen.
Right on.
So a lot of poker players, you've been around for 10, 15 years, such as yourself. They first got their start online. Was that true for you too?
No, it wasn't. I've lost count now, but maybe it was 20 years ago, somewhere around there, that I got started. And it was first with a home game that grew bigger and bigger so that our friends wouldn't play with us anymore. And we had to get opponents by advertising on Craigslist.
Oh, wow. That's old school. Wow.
Yeah. And then we, some of the guys in our game introduced us to the local Indian casinos. This was in Colorado. Uh-huh. And after that, my buddy and I started making trips to Vegas and playing in casinos there, and until we were just pretty much going every weekend. So I started out brick and mortar.
Uh-huh. So, and this is in the 90s, I guess, before the poker boom.
It was right at the end of the 90s, because I at the same time, it felt like online poker was just getting started. Like this is back at Paradise days and Pacific days, and True Poker was one of the first ones I played on.
Wow, True Poker. That's really taken me back. Yeah. So you were one of the first guys to register on all these sites and took everyone's money when it was nice and easy still?
Well, I was still figuring it out for myself. Uh-huh. So and I was playing Limit, which for me, it felt like things didn't get rolling until I made the shift to No Limit.
Right. They say, No Limit Hold'em is the Cadillac of poker. I believe Limit Poker is the Oldsmobile of poker.
Yeah, I can totally relate to that.
There you go. At what point did you start feeling like you wanted and needed to take the game more seriously, that it wasn't something, just a home game and something you played for fun anymore?
Probably as I hit a hot streak in hindsight. At the time, I was thinking, wow, I'm really good at this. I'm starting to make tons of money. Uh-huh. And looking back, since I was playing live and understanding sample sizes now, I was clearly just on a hot streak. But that's pretty exciting. Once the money starts rolling in, you start to ask the question, well, hey, can I do this instead of my desk job?
Right.
So that's when it really started getting exciting for me, was when I started making some serious money at it.
Gotcha. But these days, if that would happen to someone, you'd tell them to question themselves a little bit more and examine sample sizes, et cetera, and not to necessarily do what you did.
Yes, definitely. I feel like as soon as I get a grasp on downswings and upswings as well, a bigger one comes along. It's like truly wrapping your head around variance is a very difficult task. It's one of those things. It's like giving advice to your kids. It's like you can tell them, but they're really going to have to learn some of these lessons themselves. So, until you've hit that massive downswing, it's always a surprise.
I hear that. Well, you were mentioning your desk job before. I know that before you decided to go professional, you used to be a software project manager in the finance industry with a degree in systems engineering. #Google. Yay. Not in Google, but that's how you look for stuff. Did that career and that field of study, did that help you at the Felt in some way?
It's hard to say.
I'm just thinking dealing with numbers and, complex equations. It's not any Tom, Dick, and Harry who can get into that sort of a field, you need a really good head on your shoulders. So that's why I asked.
Yes, I know. I understand the question. But what's coming to mind is that I feel like the propensity or the knack for numbers and math, it was there. That's probably what led me into software development and the finance industry. And it's those same basic skills and interests that probably led me into poker. But I'm not sure that it influenced it as much, other than just deciding that, prompting me to do something different because I was ready for a change.
Interesting. Okay. Well, what is it that you enjoyed so much about poker in the first place?
The strategy. I've always been, prior to poker, actually, when I was a kid, I would play poker with my parents. My dad was into it, but I was actually more into chess, and I was a competitive chess player and had a rating and would go play in tournaments and things. And so even from a young age, I was just into the strategy. I love all things that relate to strategy.
So even like 20 years on, you find the same joy in poker because obviously you got your hands real dirty with strategy for a long time already.
Yeah, there's it feels like there's infinite depth to it. There's infinite depth to chess, but there's far less money to be made in it. It's much harder. like even the grandmasters are still usually teachers to support themselves.
Sure.
Many of them, and so it's whereas there's tons and tons of people making a living at poker. So the money was one thing, but the other is that it's less. I feel like there's more art in it, and I think that's certainly arguable. But you're playing players to some degree, which are so unpredictable. Whereas with chess, theoretically, the computer can solve it if it was just powerful enough, because there's a finite set of options and moves. So it's that depth, I think, that no one can ever necessarily reach the bottom or the top of. So that keeps it interesting.
Right. Well, a lifetime to master, right? That's the famous saying. Yeah. Well, you mentioned before you were living in Colorado, and currently you're in, near Vancouver, Canada. But your favorite poker room is the Bellagio, and that's not exactly around the corner from where you live. So how often do you make it out to Vegas?
Not very often these days. That's my favorite card room, but that's not to say that I go there with any frequency. I'm very playing online is very comfortable for me. I love that I can do it in my pajamas. Like, it's just, and I'm in a beautiful place, so I'm happy with how things are and what's going on. And I, a while ago, came to the conclusion that I'm just able to make much more money playing online than I am playing live. So I just don't have as much interest in live poker anymore. So the times that I have, the recent times that I've ended up back at the Bellagio were usually for other reasons, just going either on road trips through Vegas or going down to Vegas for some other reason.
So it's in a sense sort of about game selection and multi-tabling versus single tabling. It's all about the bottom line.
The bottom line and the comfort factor. Again, it's prior I was living in San Francisco. If that was after Colorado, and I would play in the card rooms in the Bay Area. And if I had card rooms, of that level around here, then I imagine I would play in them more. But it's also just access. Like there are some card rooms around here, but the games don't run very high, and I think a lot of them have the computer. They're like the computer dealt.
Yeah, I know those tables. Yeah, sure.
Which just
not the same.
Yeah, it's not the same.
Not the same. You got to have those chips to shuffle in your hand and actually have cards to lift up. I know what you mean. Well, beyond working on your poker game, on and off the felt, it's well known that players also improve by working on their mental game. And I've read that you meditate a lot. How did you get started doing that, and what's the process like?
That's a great question.
Thank you.
At least I appreciate being asked that question. I don't remember exactly when I got started with meditation. I do remember this moment or this particular time when I was very young, where I walked into the room and my dad was the lights were low and my dad was sitting cross-legged on the floor with his eyes closed. And I was really confused. I was like, is he okay? And I asked him afterwards what he was doing, and he told me he was meditating. So that was my first memory of it. And I think that sort of made it okay for me, or something that wasn't weird, the fact that I had seen my dad do it at least once or twice. So certainly from an early age, I was willing to try it. But I feel like it was maybe in my later 20s, early 30s that I started doing it with any kind of regularity. I probably came into it, or at least I started practicing meditation more for, you might say, selfish reasons, for like, because I thought it might help with my poker or help with other specific things in my life that I was trying to attain. But the beautiful thing about it was that it had all these other benefits for me, or it kind of like, in terms of reducing stress, in terms of, to some degree, opening up this like magic dimension that is all around us called mindfulness that I had really no clue about prior.
Wow, that's a really deep answer. I'm not being facetious either. It's so interesting. You know, like in a sense, sometimes it gets a little bit of a bad rap, and you know, you see the quote unquote gurus, like, you know, sitting cross-legged, that sort of thing. But when someone who, you know, has really been doing it for a while and really gains a lot of that out of it, and it's not, you know, you didn't sign up for some, you know, gimmick or anything. You saw your dad doing it. It's a really good, interesting, and deep answer. How do you feel that it has helped you in your life and at the felt at poker?
I've noticed, so one thing that comes to mind is I've noticed in my relationships, I'm able to be more present and think through my reactions to situations a little more thoroughly. So, for example, I'm a little less likely to react off the cuff negatively, especially with my stepdaughter. She's out of the house now, but when she was growing up, there was just that took some patience from time to time, and it just I was able to recognize moments where I could catch myself and respond with more wisdom to various situations. That's one example, and then on the felt, I have been able to. It comes back again to reducing stress, being able to handle the swings, and tilt has just become less and less and less of a thing to worry about, as well as just keeping everything in perspective. I think it's really helped for that, to continue to remind myself like what I'm grateful for and why I'm here.
Wow. I love that. I mean, especially, you know, I've been playing poker also for, you know, many, many years, you know, decades even. And I understand, you know, poker is an emotionally charged game. And when you're able to have such a, you know, a presence of mind, as you said, and be able to control that emotions, first, you know, it's definitely just good, like you said, not going to tilt, but also, you know, I love that idea of perspective. At the end of the day, it is just a game. You're going to do your best you can and not let the emotions affect you. Awesome. I love that one.
Self-awareness, I think, is another big part of it too, is for the learning process and development process as a player. A big part of that is coming to know yourself, and as well as one very acute thing I've noticed is, and this is even, it's not like I started meditating and this happened. It's more like it's kind of like exercise. It's the more regularity with or average time in a day that I am meditating, the more observant I am at the table of both what's going on with other players as well as what's going on inside of me. So it really is a practice in that sense, where just like exercise, you need to do it to maintain that skill in a sense.
Fantastic. Well, you're talking about you know, personal development and improving. You know, naturally that leads to coaching. We mentioned you're also a coach, and you started coaching a little over 10 years ago. This was after your own coach suggested that you give it a try. Did you have any other particular experience teaching before that, or you just sort of jumped in the deep end and said, "Well, let's give it a shot"?
I didn't have I didn't have any kind of traditional roles as a teacher.
Mm-hmm.
But I had certainly been a teacher in various like aspects throughout my life. Like on the job, just teaching clients how to use software, or camps as a counselor, like teaching
Mm-hmm.
kids to play chess, all those sorts of things. So I knew I had a knack for it and enjoyed it.
Sure. And I guess it came naturally to you?
Definitely, yeah. I'm a people person too, so I love, especially for online players where it's less social. I love that, having that avenue to relate with folks.
Excellent. Well, I mean, obviously, you've got now, after 10 years, you got tons of experience under your belt. Can you point to any particular way, perhaps, that over the last 10 years that you've been doing this coaching, that your teaching skills and methodologies have perhaps improved?
Yes, absolutely. In fact, I was thinking about this today, even.
There you go.
Part of it, I think one major shift in my approach to teaching at some point was going from trying to teach how I had been taught, or the way I had learned, or the things that had helped me move on to the next step, trying to take all that and instill it into other people. And what I eventually learned is that there's so many different player styles, or people are at all different levels or points along the path, that is not the best way to go about it. The best way is to, as best as I can at the beginning of an engagement, to figure out where that person is, what level they're on, and then also to just feel out, what kind of person they are to some degree, and what kind of relationship forms between us, because it can be different for everybody in terms of what is going to help them best improve.
Wow. And, you're talking before also about mindfulness and then being present. I can't help but reflect that, when I ask the question, you clearly you're thinking, and it's almost like not reading it, but your way of answering is so well thought out, and clearly weighing every word. It's fascinating, and I'm really enjoying it. Well, when we come back, we'll learn a little bit more about Micah and his website, pokerinAbox.com, as well as the group strategy session that he's going to be running for Red Chip Poker members in late June, called Playing from the Blinds. But first, a little strategy break.
What's up, ladies and gentlemen? It's Zach Shaw here from Red Chip Poker. Been a long time since I talked to y'all, and that's because I've been behind the scenes with the team working hard on our poker training products. Of course, Pro and Core, our premium memberships, as well as a new crash course, and that's what today's strategy segment is about. I'm not going to be breaking down strategy for y'all. Of course, I'm just a 1-2 weekend warrior, but I'm here to share some things that you might have missed if you're just a podcast listener, you don't follow us on social, or check out all of our free resources at redchippoker.com. This first one is critical if you're a cash game player like me, and we get this question time and time again. If you're going out to Vegas, where is the best place to play live cash during the series? Well, we've got a whole downloadable map for you over at redchippoker.com/VegasPoker, and this breaks down every casino and every poker room on the strip that's offering poker right now. We got a group of local grinders together who know exactly what's going on in every one of these casinos and rooms, and so they broke down what they thought were the comfiest rooms, were the best rooms, had the best action. So all that stuff's available at redchippoker.com/VegasPoker. That's free. You can get that now. But if you're going for the bracelet, you need to get a boost. And what we have for you is this new crash course, MTT 3-Bet Shoves. You can get it at redchippoker.com/3-Bet Shoves. That's the number 3, BET Shoves. And what you're going to get there is a bunch of videos that will break down this critical spot that you're going to face in tournament after tournament that's going to make or break your run at the final table. So you want to be very, very proficient in this spot. And if you take this crash course, in a week or two, you're going to be able to study and absorb all the material you need. And critically, we're going to have quizzes in there and hand examples that are going to allow you to drill these skills. So when you sit down at that WSOP event and you're looking at your stack of starting chips, you know exactly what you're going to do when that 3-bet 3-bet shoving spot comes up, and it will come up again and again if you're going to make that deep run to the cash and to the final table and hopefully to the bracelet. So we really want you to check that new crash course out at redchippoker.com/3bet shoves. So that's my strategy advice for this week. I'm sorry if I disappointed you and I'm not getting into pot odds and ranges and stuff like that, but that's what Pro and Core is for. Of course, Pro is our premium membership where for $50 a month, you can get a live group coaching session every month with one of our awesome coaches, and it's on a specific poker subject so that you can really dive deep. We do Q&As. You can ask about the subject at hand. You can post on the forum and get feedback. So it's a great way if you're a professional or an aspiring professional to keep your game sharp. And of course, that includes access to every video, every crash course, everything we've made. So you never run out of stuff to study. And then if you're really just trying to get into studying for the first time or maybe get back into studying, you're going to want to check out Core, redchippoker.com/core. That's our $5 a week program. It's a structured course of over 100 bite-sized lessons from multiple coaches. We've got text, we've got video, diagrams, and amazing discussions where people are getting their questions answered. And of course, you can find tons of free resources at redchippoker.com. So, hey, it might not have been a traditional strategy segment, but if you follow any one of those links I just sent you, you're going to have plenty to chew on. I hope to see you guys in Vegas. Until then, back to the podcast.
Welcome back to the Red Chip Poker Podcast. Robbie Straczynski here with professional poker player and coach Mike Gano. Mike, tell us a little bit about your website, pokerinabox.com. When did you start it? What's it all about? And how'd you come up with that name?
I started it maybe 10 years ago or so, somewhere in that zone. Again, it's hard to remember. I moved up here. The one milestone that is clear is my anniversary with my wife. I moved up here 13 years ago, which is at the same time we got married, and that marked the most recent switch to poker. I've actually it was the third attempt for me.
Oh, wow.
This is the one that stuck, and that was the time that I switched to no limit, and then it made everything way easier.
Uh-huh.
But it was, so the timeline was a couple years after that, I think, is when I got coaching from Newt Dogg, if anyone remembers him from Card Runners, and he got me into coaching, and then within a couple years, I put together a video series on the fundamentals of poker. And I created the website in order to sell that video series. And I created the website, and I thought that's all I needed. I put up the video series, and I thought, all right, now I just sit back and watch the money roll in. And it didn't work like that at all.
No kidding.
Yeah, the strangest thing. Yeah. So I very quickly, well, not very quickly, it took a while. I learned that in order to attract people to your website, you have to provide value, and not just once in the form of a video, but continuously. So that got me into blogging, and it just kind of took off from there. I found I really enjoyed blogging and writing about poker and the interaction that comes with the players, with the readers. So that was really where I just kind of shifted my focus to. I wasn't even creating videos as much as I was just blogging about things.
Wow. And where did the name come from, Poker in a Box?
I don't know. The main thing was I wanted to keep it easy to spell, was one of the biggest things, because I think some of the more exotic names, if you say it to someone and they can't spell it, then you're in trouble.
Right.
Or if it's just ambiguous. And then also memorable. And I thought it was something that would be easy for folks to remember.
And that's why we're saying it 100 times. So, most people will be listening to it, to this podcast. They'll be visiting the site repeatedly, hopefully. At least they'll be dreaming about it. I did visit the site myself, of course, prior to this interview. And I noticed you got a bunch of products in there, not just that first set of videos. You got materials on advanced c-bet bluffing, optimal river play, a pre-flop strategy guide, and even, more for beginners, how to study poker. It got me wondering, is all of your training content part of one sort of umbrella scheme or GTO style, or is it each product sort of meant to stand on its own?
Each product stands on its own, and they were, it was a progression of topics that I thought would be useful over time. And they also came about from polling my audience through Twitch and then my mailing list. Eventually, before I created a new piece of content, I would reach out to my students and everyone in my community and poll them to see what would be what folks are most interested in. So that's usually how each one came about.
Well, I got to tell the listeners here, Mike and I are not sharing screens right now, but somehow he predicted exactly what my next question was. Is it based on feedback from your students? So good read, sir. So we'll skip that one because we know the answer there. But one of your products, besides the one I mentioned, I notice it's actually on sale right now for $34.99. It's something called Improve Your Blind Play. What's that all about?
Well, that is about playing from the blinds and blind strategy. And I will be doing another blind play group coaching course coming up with Red Chip Poker, as you're aware.
Sure.
And I have, so this is one thing I've been thinking about actually, is how the content might relate between those two videos. Or that video in the coaching group coaching that I'm about to do. So yeah, that one is my intention actually for the next one is to build on it and bring in some newer concepts as well.
Well, for the group coaching session, can you sort of say maybe you've got already an outline or an idea of what you'll be talking about? Maybe mention a couple of the subtopics of playing from the blinds that you'll be covering?
Sure. So my overall strategy for these sorts of things, for videos, webinars, and the group coaching, is to I'm usually speaking to wider audience, and I want there to be something for everyone. So what I will tend to do is start with more basic fundamental ideas and then just get more and more advanced as I proceed through the video or the coaching. So that for folks that are potentially at a more novice level, they have something they can immediately work with, but then they can come back to the video later on in their career, perhaps once they're more advanced. And then if there's more advanced players that they're not just bored twiddling their thumbs, that there's something for them as well.
Right. That's also leads into what I was going to ask is, so who is sort of the ideal audience that you're thinking for this session? And does it matter if I, play live more or online more, or if I'm only a micro stakes player?
It doesn't. I'm going to. It may not be appropriate if you are playing 10, 25, $2,500 buy-in tables, because I'm not playing that game. So
right.
if you're, but for I'd say everyone following Red Chip Poker, like it's can be useful. My personal specialization is online cash, but as I said before, I've played plenty of live. I have played a fair amount of tournaments as well. So there is going to be something for all of those folks. And the basic fundamentals of blind play in theory tend to be the same for all of those things anyway. At least that's how we'll start, is talking about the fundamentals and the theory in terms of like why we even choose raise sizes. What is our reasons for entering the pot in the first place? Because I like in any discussion that's going to get into three betting, especially, or calling, pre-flop discussion, I think it's important to start with those, because if you have those general ideas and you understand the mechanics of it and the theory, then you can apply it to lots of different situations. If it's a tournament and the pre-flop raise sizes are smaller or stacks are deeper, but you understand those fundamental principles of pot odds, then you are you can apply it to each situation. Or if you have to switch from a game that has switch to a game that has a higher rake, or switch to or you're in a tournament and the antes kick in, that sort of thing, then you know at least which direction you should be adjusting, if not the precise hands.
Nice. Okay. Well, you've got my appetite whet here. I'm sure a lot of our listeners also are like, sounds like an interesting proposition. Maybe I'll join this. Maybe to give a little bit more of a teaser, maybe you could just give us maybe 2, 3 of like some general tips. If some of us, maybe it's me, hint, hint, are playing. It's a little tough. It's a little bit of a struggle playing in tough out of position spots like the blinds. So maybe you can give a little tip or two.
Absolutely. So you, I think, in mentioning out of position play, you really are getting to the heart of the matter. The reason I think that blind play is called out, as opposed to, you don't hear people talking about cutoff play. It's like, I really want to learn to play the cutoff. It's the reason I think that blind play gets so much attention is because you usually do end up out of position. So also in this course, or in the video, I'm going to talk about, as much as I can, I'd like to get into some post-flop play. So blind play starts with a pre-flop discussion, but when I make recommendations, for example, around getting more aggressive and perhaps increasing both your calling and 3-betting ranges from the big blind, that must also be coupled with, okay, so I do that. That means I might be seeing more flops. Now what? You need to, at the same time, equip people with some more skills for playing post-flop out of position. So that's something we'll get into as well. And what else can I offer? I think another thing is a general approach to improving in all aspects, but this also applies to playing from the blinds. And that is to, I like to say, foster a strong sense of curiosity. So I can, like, a specific technique for this is to endeavor to develop like a deeper thinking for your play. So, for example, when you're studying and doing your hand reviews, after you've considered all of your options on a particular hand, push yourself to find one more. Push yourself. There's always more. Like, because I think this is like one of the main things that's going to help some players get past everybody else in their game. The way to sort of move on and not get stuck at your level for an extended period of time is to somehow break free of what everybody else is doing. The problem is that most players are all reading the same forums and books and getting the same knowledge, which is good and gets people up to a baseline. But to get beyond that, you have to have that awareness to see what everyone else is doing, to see what you are doing, and to do something different. So that's another technique I can offer.
Those are some good tips, and I can't speak for other forums or training materials or things like that, but I know I have very long been myself stuck in the mindset of, okay, well, if I'm out of position here, I've got to be playing like a ridiculously strong hand, or I'll just fold. I'll pick my spots. I'll just wait, much more passive. And I do know that that's a flaw in my own game, and in general, aggression wins. Very grandiose speaking there. Aggression will always win the day in the long run, and to be giving up almost, from the outset, from 1 or 2 or even 3 spots, especially, from the blinds, from those first 2 spots, and, just kind of, have your white flag ready to wave unless you've got aces, kings, or queens or something, is not a good strategy. And I might be exaggerating a little bit, but the fact is, people are playing well. It's tough. And what you're advocating there certainly makes a lot of sense. And I imagine our listeners would agree that, there's what to be learned there.
So again, it's tricky to offer specific strategic suggestions to people because inevitably one suggestion might be useful to one person but harmful to another. So like what I said before, I was even trepidatious saying it, which is, odds are that you can probably increase the number of hands that you're playing from the blinds. And the reason I'm careful with saying that is because that's not true for everybody. There are certainly players that are too loose and need to tighten up from the blinds. But in my experience with my audience, I would say that 80% of the population falls on the tighter, more passive side, which is why I'm giving that more specific advice, that there are probably hands in your range that would be more profitable to play than to fold. And finding that value, as I said before, requires two things. One, of course, it requires playing that hand, either calling or 3-betting it. And then two, as I said, how to play it post flop such that you're not just check folding every time.
Right. Well, for the last question, I didn't prepare one on this, but I'd be remiss if I didn't mention it. You mentioned your audience. You talked about, the people who obviously visit your website, who've taken your coaching sessions, but also Twitch. You do plenty of live streaming on Twitch. Tell us a little bit about that and how is that sort of different from all of the coaching that you offer? Is it just much more casual and interacting with people, or also sort of aiming for instructional purposes?
So I haven't actually been streaming on Twitch lately.
Oh, okay.
I found after a while that it was a better investment of my time to create YouTube videos or the one-on-one coaching than it was on Twitch. The way Twitch works is that you sign on and you start streaming, and over time, the longer you stream, the more folks will come into your channel. So usually you've got to go for, the longer you go, the better. And your average streamers are going for 3, 4, 5 hours, which is a serious time commitment.
Sure.
So I found that I could, it was just a better return on my time invested to either create more precise videos that are packed with information or just contribute that time to coaching directly.
Interesting. Well, now I'm realizing why I didn't answer that question in the first place. As I asked the question in the first place, but no, it's a good answer, and definitely a lesson to be learned from that. Okay, everyone's going on Twitch, and I guess clearly the answer would have been for instructional purposes, but you made it very clear, you got to examine what it is that you're doing. If it doesn't make sense, don't bang your head against the wall, and let's see how you could squeeze more value out of your time. Makes perfect sense. And what's your YouTube channel?
If you YouTube Mike Gano, it will get you there, or YouTube Poker in a Box.
Okay, great.
Either one will get you there.
Perfect. Well, and speaking of, how do we reach you? I'm sure, some of our listeners may be interested in signing up for the individual coaching sessions, or maybe they've got some additional questions for you. How would people reach you or get in touch?
They can reach me by email, mike@pokerinabox.com, or if you are interested in coaching, if you go to pokerinabox.com, at the top, there's a link to my coaching page.
Excellent. Well, Mike Gano, sorry for having mispronounced it before. It's been a pleasure speaking with you. And everybody, I hope you enjoyed learning about Mike as much as I have. I'm your host, Robbie Straczynski, and you've been listening to the Red Chip Poker Podcast.
Thanks for tuning in to this week's episode. But don't stop learning now. Head over to redchippoker.com. You'll find everything you need to get better today. Join our free, friendly strategy group and start talking poker with our coaches and community. And listen, if you're ready to take poker more seriously, sign up for Core, our $5 a week complete training platform built for players who have limited time to study. Core is packed with over 100 bite-sized lessons, from the fundamentals to advanced strategies, quizzes, achievements, discussion threads, and more. And for the bravest of heart, we invite you to check out our pro membership, which includes 24/7 access to hundreds of videos, all of our playlists, all of our crash courses, and more. If you want to see what the top 1% of players are studying to keep their edges razor sharp, visit redchippoker.com/Ruby. That's RUBY. And get a special deal on your first 3 weeks. Until next time, run good, play better, and get there.